To be white in America is to claim an identity that attempts to be deracialized and is predicated upon the receipt of power and privilege simply based on one's appearance, a racialized appearance. So the fundamental equation is that whiteness equals access to power and privilege based on one's racial identity. We can trace every major economic, health, educational, access to criminal justice resources in the country, and when we trace those statistics, it continues to be the case that the white community receives and has access and is benefited by those systems. And communities of color, however we define them, whether African American, Native American, Latino, Asian American, have proportionally less access and resource from those systems. So we continue to see racism being an ongoing issue that needs to be addressed systemically and not just relationally. We start by engaging in organizing efforts that are no longer predicated with white people being in charge of how the change happens, no longer with white people being the ones to make the decisions about what the emphasis of the organizing efforts will be, but rather look for truly multicultural and multiracial collectives that have a common understanding of the way racism acts, and because of that are freed of the paternalism and white noblesse oblige that comes through when we don't understand that racism isn't just there to keep us from saying bad words, but rather racism is there to ensure that the dynamics of power and privilege take place. So the shorter answer is we need to find ways to build collectives and coalitions that have a clear analysis of racism, and that's going to make us much more effective in overturning systemic injustice.
My name is Kia Abbey, and I am one of the coordinators of the Sustained Dialogue program at Montana State. And to tonight's program about white privilege, we thought important to bring to the university, since we are such a racially homogenous campus. I mean, we do have, it's a predominantly white population, and it's important that we're having conversations about what that means for the identity of campus and the identity of our institution, and the impact that has on our students of color that we have on campus. In terms of Dr. Shearer's talk, I think he did a great job in such a short time of explaining the concept of white privilege, because it can be a scary concept, and a concept that causes shame and guilt and questioning and anger and frustration. And I think he presented it in a way that provided for a context of understanding rather than a context of anger, which is important, because recognizing your privilege isn't about guilt. It's about awareness and understanding how power plays a role in your life and the opportunities you are granted.
But in as much as those who are writing and developing those foreign policies are often bringing an innate sense of superiority, which is directly connected to the history of race in this country, then absolutely there's a connection. It would be a little bit more difficult to trace that country by country, but I think those more well-versed in international politics than I could make that connection pretty directly. Well, an immediate example that comes to mind are the Truth and Reconciliation Commissions that were put in place after the end of apartheid in South Africa. That was an imperfect process, but it did aim to actually get the experience of those who've been oppressed by that nation's system of apartheid recognized and acknowledged and out in public. We've had hints of those kind of processes in the past, but nothing on the scale that was attempted in South Africa.
So I think he did a great job. I hope that in the dialogues our participants are touching on the intersectionality of white privilege and what it means, especially in Montana, to be a predominantly white state with a high level of poverty and a large population living in rural communities, and how the intersectionality of those identities create certain circumstances in our state. I hope that they're getting to explore their experiences a little bit more with race, and they'll walk out of here with at least catalyzing a desire to understand their own identities more because of the experience they've had at the dialogue.
Educate yourselves about the reality of race not only in this country, but in this state as well. I think that greatest danger anyone can do, students or others, is to simply assume that you know, that you have what you need to know from the public media. People are uninformed. We need to understand the kinds of history of white privilege and power and racism that I was discussing tonight in order to be informed and to stop making fools of ourselves in many instances.